If you're over 70, or you love someone who is, there's a good chance you've never thought twice about how you walk. Walking feels automatic. You don't plan your steps. You don't think about your stride. You just move. But researchers who study aging have spent decades looking closely at something most of us take for granted, and what they've found is worth paying attention to. The way you walk, specifically one small mechanical detail in your stride, is quietly connected to your risk of falling, and falls are one of the leading causes of serious injury and death in adults over 70. This isn't about scaring you. It's about understanding something simple enough that you can start paying attention to it today. Let's start with the change itself, because it really is simple. Many older adults, often without realizing it, shift from a heel-to-toe walking pattern to what's sometimes called a flat-footed or shuffling gait. Instead of the heel striking the ground first and rolling smoothly through to the toes pushing off, the whole foot tends to land at once, and the toes barely lift. It looks like a small thing. It often develops gradually, so gradually that the person doing it has no idea their walk has changed at all. But this shift matters more than it seems, because it's connected to balance, muscle strength, and reaction time. Three things that become increasingly important for staying upright and avoiding falls as we age. Here's why this happens in the first place. As we get older, several things are naturally occurring in the body at once. Muscle mass, particularly in the legs and around the ankles, tends to decline if it isn't actively maintained. This is sometimes referred to by researchers as sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. At the same time, the nerves responsible for balance and spatial awareness, what's called proprioception, can become less sensitive. Your brain relies on constant feedback from your feet, ankles, and legs to know exactly where your body is in space. When that feedback weakens, your brain compensates in ways that often show up first in your walk. One of the most common compensations is a shorter, flatter stride. Lifting the toes and rolling through a full heel-to-toe motion requires strength in the calf and shin muscles, and it requires confidence that your ankle can handle uneven weight shifts. If either of those is compromised, even slightly, the body tends to default to a safer feeling but less efficient pattern. Shorter steps, less foot clearance off the ground, and a flatter landing. The problem is that this safer feeling gait is actually associated with a higher risk of tripping, because the toes and front of the foot aren't lifting as high off the ground. Even a half inch of extra ground clearance can be the difference between stepping over an uneven sidewalk crack and catching your foot on it. This is where the save your life part of this conversation becomes less about drama and more about statistics. According to data tracked by public health researchers, falls are the leading cause of injury-related death among adults 65 and older in the United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has published research showing that 1 in 4 older adults reports falling each year, and many falls go unreported. A fall doesn't just mean a bruise. For someone over 70, a fall can result in a hip fracture, and hip fractures carry a notably high risk of complications, extended hospital stays, and loss of independence in the year that follows. This is why researchers who study aging pay so much attention to something as seemingly small as stride pattern. It's not the gait itself that's dangerous. It's what an altered gait often signals, and what it puts a person at risk for down the line. So what does the research actually say about walking and life expectancy? Multiple studies published in geriatric medicine journals have looked at gait speed, meaning simply how fast a person walks over a short distance, and found it to be a surprisingly strong predictor of overall health outcomes in older adults. Some researchers have described gait speed as a vital sign, alongside things like blood pressure and heart rate, because it reflects so many systems working together at once: cardiovascular health, muscle strength, joint function, balance, and even cognitive processing speed. A slower gait, or a shift toward a flatter, more cautious walking pattern, often shows up years before other, more obvious signs of frailty. This doesn't mean a slower walk causes poor health outcomes directly. It means it's a visible marker of changes already happening inside the body. Changes that, when caught early, can often be addressed. That's really the heart of this conversation. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness, because awareness is what allows for early action. If you or someone you care about has noticed a shuffling walk, shorter steps, or a general hesitancy in movement, that's useful information. It's a signal worth mentioning to a doctor or physical therapist, not a signal to panic over. Let's talk about what a healthy gait actually involves, so you know what to look for. A full heel-to-toe walking pattern has three basic phases. First, the heel strikes the ground. Second, weight rolls forward through the middle of the foot. Third, the toes push off the ground to propel the body into the next step, which requires the toes and front of the foot to lift clearly off the ground during the swing phase. When all three of these phases are happening smoothly, they distribute impact evenly, engage the right muscles, and keep your center of gravity stable and predictable. When any one of these phases is shortened or skipped, like when the toes don't lift much during the swing phase, the whole system becomes less stable and small trips become more likely. Now here's the encouraging part, and it's genuinely encouraging, not just a hopeful add-on. Gait pattern is not fixed. Unlike some aspects of aging that are harder to influence, walking mechanics respond well to targeted attention and appropriate strength work. Physical therapists who specialize in geriatric mobility often work with patients specifically on reestablishing heel-to-toe walking patterns, improving ankle strength, and retraining the small, stabilizing muscles that keep balance steady. This isn't a guarantee that works the same for everyone. Every person's situation, health history, and mobility limitations are different, and this is exactly why a physical therapist or physician's evaluation matters more than any general online tip. But the underlying principle, that gait can improve with the right kind of attention, is well supported. There are some general, low-risk things worth knowing, understanding that they are educational starting points and not a substitute for a professional assessment. One is simply paying attention to how your foot lands when you walk. Are you landing heel first, or does your whole foot seem to hit the ground at once? This kind of self-awareness costs nothing and can be a helpful starting point for a conversation with a doctor. Another is noticing whether you feel like you're lifting your feet fully off the ground, or whether they feel like they're dragging or shuffling, especially when tired. Fatigue often makes existing gait issues more noticeable, which is itself useful information. Footwear is another factor that's often overlooked. Shoes that are too loose, too worn down, or lack proper ankle support can make it harder to maintain a confident full stride, regardless of muscle strength. This isn't about buying expensive shoes. It's about making sure footwear fits well and provides enough structure that the foot can move through its full natural range without extra compensation. Strength is really the foundation underneath all of this, and it's worth being specific about which muscles matter most. The calf muscles and the muscles along the front of the shin are directly responsible for that toe-off and toe-lift motion during walking. When these muscles are strong, the foot naturally clears the ground more, the stride naturally lengthens, and balance naturally improves, because the ankle has more control through each phase of the step. This is why physical therapists so often incorporate simple ankle and calf strengthening into fall prevention programs for older adults. Again, this is general education, not a personalized exercise prescription, and anyone starting a new strength routine after 70, especially with any existing balance concerns, should do so under the guidance of a physician or physical therapist who can account for individual health conditions. Balance itself is a trainable skill, much like strength, and this is something that surprises a lot of people. Balance isn't something you either have or don't have as you age. It's a system built from muscle strength, joint flexibility, and the nervous system's ability to process information from your feet and inner ear. All three parts of that system can respond to appropriate, guided practice. This is part of why community balance classes and physical therapy programs specifically designed for older adults have become such a consistent recommendation from organizations focused on healthy aging. It's worth pausing here to say something important about tone, because a topic like this can easily tip into fear-based messaging. And that's not the goal. The goal isn't to make you anxious about every step you take. It's to give you information that most people simply never think about until after a fall has already happened. Prevention only works if it happens before the event it's trying to prevent. And that means talking about this now, in a calm and practical way, rather than waiting for a crisis to bring it up. If you're watching this, and you're not over 70 yourself, but you have a parent or grandparent who is, this is genuinely useful information to share with them, gently and without alarm. Something as simple as saying, I read that doctors pay attention to how people walk as they age. Have you had your balance or gait checked recently? Can open a door to a conversation that might otherwise never happen. Many older adults don't bring up small changes in their mobility because they don't realize those changes are medically relevant or because they don't want to seem like they're declining. Framing this as routine health maintenance, similar to a vision check or a hearing test, tends to feel far less threatening than framing it as a warning sign. So, to bring this back to where we started, the way you walk after 70 isn't just a habit. It's a reflection of muscle strength, nerve function, and balance, all working together in a pattern your body has settled into, often without your awareness. A shift toward a flatter, shorter, more cautious stride is common, and it's understandable given the natural changes that come with aging. But it's also something that research consistently links to higher fall risk. And because falls remain one of the most serious health threats facing older adults in the United States, understanding this connection matters. The most important takeaway isn't a specific exercise or a guaranteed fix, because there isn't one that applies to everyone. The most important takeaway is awareness. Notice how you walk. Notice how your loved ones walk. If something feels different, shuffled, hesitant, or unsteady, that's worth mentioning to a doctor or physical therapist, not because it's an emergency, but because it's exactly the kind of small, early signal that, when addressed early, tends to lead to much better outcomes than waiting until after a fall has already happened. Small, consistent attention to something as basic as your stride might be one of the most overlooked tools for staying independent, active, and safe in the years after 70. It costs nothing to notice. It costs nothing to ask a question at your next doctor's visit. And that small habit of noticing is really where prevention begins.